Ladies and gentlemen, grab your gloves and get your compost ready. Stepping into the ring is the perennial powerhouse, the sultan of soil, the beast of the beds, where permaculture reigns, food grows wild, community roots run deep, and yes, the garden punts hit hard. Freedom starts in the soil. This is the Guerrilla Gardening Show.
Welcome back to the Guerrilla Gardening Show. I'm Mike from Mike's in the Garden, back as always with Sam from Central Florida Abundance. What's happening, Sam?
What's going on, Mike? Been hanging out in the garden today, and I have a video I want to share of a plant that is all over my yard, and I know that it's spreading around your yard too. And that's Moringa oleifera, the drumstick, the tree of life. Really just an awesome plant, and I want to show it off. I got a quick little video just kind of showing the different parts of the plant and some of the ones around my yard. Let me pull that up.
Yeah, I started, I think it was 12 seedlings and 11 survived. So 11 are in pots ready to go to new homes. And when I talk about this plant, the miracle tree, everyone gets excited, and I go, well, you need to be ready to cut this thing back and, maintain this thing. It's not an everyday maintenance, but if you forget about it, all of a sudden it's 12 feet tall. You've got yellow leaves falling in your pool, and the white's mad at you. So
that's absolutely right. Yeah, I mean, honestly, this is another plant that in some areas of Florida is considered a little bit invasive because of how rapidly it can grow and reproduce itself. You mentioned, it needs to be cut back to really be useful. And that's a big key to this. So in this first shot here, we're kind of looking up into the canopy of one of my moringas, and you can see all the seed pods hanging down.
Yeah.
And so this is not a leguminous tree, even though it does have pods. It's in a different family, but inside those pods, there's usually 10 to 15 seeds. And they're always going to come after those white flowers that appear all over the tree. You can see right here, actually right here shows one of the first places I cut this.
Yeah.
So when this got, I think, like 4 feet tall, I cut it back, and then I got this branching. And it's good to note that when I first cut it and it started to regrow, it had way more branches than this. There was probably 50 little branches coming off this joint. And so I just selected a few. I took most of those off and just allowed it to put most of its energy into these points. But that also kind of highlights what I like to do with the moringas is use them as utility trees. It is a very medicinal, healthy tree, but they grow really straight, and they have really nice lateral branches. So right here, I'm training a dragon fruit to grow up this moringa, and once it reaches one of those branches at about the 4-foot height, it'll droop over that. And you can see this moringa is pretty solid, so it shouldn't have any trouble supporting that dragon fruit. And you can see these upper branches, they have been cut, but they're in need of being cut again. And I'll cut this whole tree back if we have a bad storm or in the winter. But here, I'm cracking open one of the seed pods just to show what these seeds look like when they're ready. And this pod was probably a little bit under ready. When they're totally perfect, they'll just crack open. But these seeds are all good in here. These are the seeds inside a shell. And when they're fresh like this, you can just put them straight in the ground like that. And what you talked about earlier with, your germination test where you had 11 out of 12. That's pretty typical. Moringa seeds love to germinate. I've got them everywhere. Now this one is another one in the yard that I have never cut. And you can see it's growing straight as an arrow up. It's probably like 16 feet right now. And this one is going to get cut. I'm really just letting it kind of grow right now. It's at the point right now where I look at it every day and I'm like, it's about time to cut that. But I haven't been back there with the pruners yet. So anytime this one will get cut, but if you don't cut them, they really do just go straight up. And then, for a shade tree, not bad. But what happens is you can't really harvest those leaves when the seeds come. You got to wait for the pods to fall off if you want to get any of that. So it becomes a lot less useful when all the biomass is up top. Plus, when you prune them, when you get them more branching, you get a lot more leaf production. So on this tree, if I harvested 10 leaves, the leaves are these whole branches that you're seeing here.
Snap them right off. They snap pretty easy.
Yeah, they do. But there's not a whole lot of them on this tree. And so, that's what happens when you only have the singular trunks. That's why this one will be pruned. But really, this one and in the location that it's in is really just meant to be chop and drop and shade for the annual gardens. But it does still get fed to the chickens.
So this thing looks like it's about, I'd say at least 10 feet tall. So if you...
it's about 16 feet.
Okay, yeah. I'm assuming you're going to top this like 4 feet, 6 feet, something like that?
Yeah, probably back around like 4 or 5 feet. Okay. Because, with a tree, once it gets tall, when you top it, it's going to quickly try to return to the height that it was previously. So, if it was 5 feet tall and I cut it back a foot, it's going to quickly regrow a foot of branching. This one, when I cut it back to like 4 or 5 feet, it's going to quickly try to regrow several feet of branches. And then I'll select that down to probably 3 or 4 branches. And then by the winter time, when everything's slowed down, it's going to have a pretty nice shape to it. But yeah, this one will get topped, and you can see with the bananas here, the other ones in the back, they're also at the top of their branches, probably 16 to 20 feet. And they're going to get topped as well. So, I don't ever really want the trees to exceed like 20 feet. And once they do, they're just going to get cut back. And that's one of the beauties of Moringa, is that you can just cut it and it's going to regrow. I could cut all the leaves off this. Yeah. And now here you'll see some of the seedlings that I've been putting in. And they're everywhere. I pretty much have a Moringa between each set of these Napier grasses, and that's in all of these rows. This is a little bit of a younger one that I cut earlier, and you can see, because it was so much younger when it got cut, it's not nearly as sturdy, and the regrowth is much slower. This was probably cut like, 4 or 5 months ago. Okay. And it's only got about a foot, maybe 2 feet of growth past that split there. But it does have some seed pods on it. And what's really cool, these seed pods, when they're young, and you can see this one here, it's green and it's really flexible. Especially when they're a little bit smaller than that, they are delicious. And they're soft and tender. You can eat them raw. Okay. But cooked, they're still amazing. They've got a little bit of like nuttiness and a little bit of heat to it. But that's really, why the Moringa has become so popular, is that the whole tree is edible. You can eat, obviously you eat the leaves. You can eat the seed pods when they're young. People eat the seeds. I've found, I don't know if you've ever tried the moringa seeds. I don't find them to be very palatable,
They don't look
but
it.
yeah, but
Have you
people
had the
say,
flowers?
yeah, the flowers are delicious.
Very
Have you
sweet.
tried that?
Yeah.
You can make a really good tea with that, or just like, put it in some syrup to sweeten it, or just throw them on a salad, I guess. Um,
And the
but yeah,
bark and roots are edible, correct?
yeah, the root is what I was going to highlight. The bark is edible. Again,
Who eats bark?
I mean, it's not super palatable. The thing about being edible is that none of the tree is toxic, and it all has some nutritional benefits that your body can absorb. Are you going to enjoy eating all parts of it? Probably not.
Yeah.
But, if you need it, if you were starving, or if you just weren't getting, the nutrients that you really need from your diet, then you can use this tree as a supplement. Now, the roots, that is a delicious part of the tree. It tastes like horseradish, which, I mean, you can kind of grow horseradish here, but it's finicky, and moringas aren't at all. And so, once the tree, really, you wouldn't want to let them grow like this. To get a good root, you top them a couple times, and let that trunk get real thick. And after about a year, you'd pull them up, and then you shave the root, and you really just use like shavings, like you would horseradish. Just take a grater to it and get a little bit for like a soup or a sauce, or an addition to a recipe. But it's just such an interesting taste. And I mean, the leaves, they have some heat to them a little bit.
Spiciness.
So yeah, so it's not too surprising, but I don't know. Anytime a root has like a good taste, it always just blows my mind. I'm like, this thing was just in the dirt, and I'm like, hiding all those secrets down there.
So I've had moringa for 3 years, and probably in the last 2 weeks was the first time I've ever seen a hummingbird feeding on the flowers.
Yeah, they do. They love those flowers.
Awesome. Yeah.
I actually, for the very first time, saw a moringa or a hummingbird on a moringa, not one of mine. But you wouldn't think it, because typically hummingbirds like really tubular flowers for their like long beaks, and the moringa flowers are very short and stout, as the best way I can describe it.
Yeah.
But they seem to love it. They spend a lot of time there. It's hard to get a picture of them, that's for sure.
Yeah. So I've seen videos where they've taken larger, like these seed pods on the right here, where they're still green. They look like they're turning brown, so probably not those, but you showed the ones before where they're really thin and bendy. And I've seen videos where they take a fully developed green pod, kind of fry it in a pan, and then they split it open, pull the seeds out, unless they did that first and then fried it. And then they almost like scoop out the middle, and that's what they eat, is like what the stuff around the seeds. So
I could imagine that. I mean, they are pretty hefty pods, and when like the one I cracked open earlier. Wow, how did I jump right to the? You can see, right now it's dry. Obviously, it's dried out. The pod is brown, but there's a lot of stuff in here. Fiber, flesh, whatever you want to call it. Things coating the seeds, and when these pods are green, because I've cracked, plenty of them open before it's time just to see what's in there. That's how you figure stuff out. And I mean, it looks like you can eat it, like I have ice cream beans. You familiar with that?
I've heard of them, but have yet to come across them or eat them.
Not at all related to Moringa, but they make a pod, and the ice cream substance that you eat is the flesh around the seeds. You don't eat the seeds or anything in it. You just crack that pod open and like suck like the skin off these seeds. And so, when these are green and like juicy, if I was hungry, I could definitely imagine, trying to eat that. And if you cook it, throw some garlic and butter on it, sure, it'd be great. But the seeds, when they're dry like this, I've heard, and I'll have to look more into it. But I encourage everybody to look into it because it could save your life someday. That they have the ability to draw toxins out of like water. So if you were to put some seeds in your water, they can absorb some of the chemicals, heavy metals, and maybe like radioactive things are usually what like plants can absorb, radon and free radicals and such. Sure. But this is how people used to, have safe, healthy water. They'd use plants to filter it. We didn't have chlorine and fluoride, and we were a lot better off for it.
Yeah. So I will say that when I have grown my moringas from seed, the seed pods here.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing. You got to collect those seeds because if not, they're going to be everywhere.
Yeah, well, it's such a thing now that I'm like, well, I guess I should start putting these on the Etsy shop, selling some of these. So, but this like stuff, I wouldn't even call it a shell, a jacket, I guess, a membrane maybe. I actually soaked mine. I don't know if it was overnight or I went to work in the morning and came back from work and they were soaking, and literally just peeled that right off, stuck them right in a planter's pot, made a row 6 inches apart, 24 inches long, planted 12 seeds. A week later, I had 11 seedlings, and 2 weeks later, or maybe 3 weeks later, they were all transplanted into like half-gallon pots. So nice. The resiliency is amazing. I tried to propagate at least 20 cuttings from a moringa, was successful with one, and now it's a 20-foot tree, so it is possible. Just kind of shave the ends off, expose some of that green layer underneath, and I was surprised that one caught.
It's definitely possible. I don't think it's worth it to do cuttings because the seeds are just so prolific. Like, I mean, anything you can get like above a 90% germination rate, just, out of the pod is really great. What's crazy about the moringas, I save my seeds because I'll be selling them next year. And I have like 2 places in the yard where I go and shell the seeds and then package them up. And in both of those spots, which are in grass, like, lawn, that maybe I haven't, like, it's by a chair and I haven't mowed it in maybe, like 3 weeks. There's moringa trees everywhere, just from like a seed fell here, a seed fell there, and they've all popped up. And I'm like, man, if I could find some way to save y'all, because it wouldn't be a bad spot for a tree, but right in the middle of the grass, that's what's hard to take care of.
Yeah, I've done that too. I've actually thrown what I thought was far too gone seed pods and just kind of thrown them in the garden as compost. And several months later, I've had little seedlings. So
I mean, if you want them, you can come get them. If anybody wants them, just let me know. You can come get some moringa. But I've probably got at least 60 intentional seedlings coming up. So I'm not even going to put any work into trying to grow anymore.
yeah, the mower will take care of that.
Yeah, but I mean, having moringa in the yard, it's a plant that, doesn't mind poor soils. It can deal with a lot of the drought issues that we have here.
Now, Sam, you told me that this tree, it lasts about 10 years, 15 years, something like that.
Yeah, it is a short-lived tree.
Okay.
And a lot of the trees that you see that grow quickly, grow in poor soils, I like to call them weedy trees, but they're really the pioneer tree species. They pop up, they create some temporary canopy for some, more long-lived tree species to get established underneath. But then in 10 or 15 years, the trees will become too fragile and start to break apart. In a natural system, the more mature trees would then outshade them. The moringas really like to grow in full sun. So, once other trees get established and create shade, they're not going to grow as much anymore. Also, in the wild, it would be really interesting. I don't know where you'd go to see it, but to see some just wild moringas and how they were growing, because you'd think, they're not getting pruned, so they would just grow, but they would end up getting pruned by the weather. At a certain point, the wind would break their top off and make them branch. So, just to see like what kind of shape this tree would want to take if left to its own devices.
Yeah.
But, it's really good when you're trying to start like a food forest, because you can get this tree growing and get some quick protection for, your slower growing trees. Plant a bunch of these around your avocados and, your citrus trees. And I mean, I think what I was trying to show in one part of this is that I use this tree for mulch, and then that gives me extremely nutrient rich mulch. I'm putting a lot of nutrients into the soil every time I'm putting these branches back on top of it.
Awesome.
You want to highlight Sleepy Hill Farm. They're a small farm in Lakeland that it's a family farm. They've been growing produce organically. They do cattle, they do chickens. Really just great people. Wanted to get to see your whole life in here. Yeah, they do classes at the farm, sourdough, herbal teas. I think they're currently looking for some assistance maybe, but they're always inviting people out to the farm in North Lakeland. It's a wonderful little area, and they're great people.
Excellent. Shout outs to Sleepy Hill Farm. Sam, great episode. I love talking about moringa. We could probably do a 10-part series on moringa, but tell everyone where they can find more of your expertise and if they want to hire you for some consulting.
Absolutely. You can check out Central Florida Abundance on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube if you're not watching it here already. And then you can check out the iGo Family Farm on Instagram and igofarm.com if you're looking for some produce.
And you can follow me at Mike's in the Garden, pretty much anywhere there is social media. And come say hi, leave a comment, be weird. And also you can check out some. I don't have a specific shirt on today, but you know where the good shirts at. They're right here is where you want to go get.